two-time Entertainer of the Year, a man who's done commanding performances for 4 presidents of the United States. He's sold over 1 million CDs and tapes. He's the husband of Polly and the father of Austin. Please welcome presidents of the United States. He's sold Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, have a seat. Let's get started. I'm so excited to be here. I cannot stand it. This is just an absolute blast for me. I mean, this is what I have done for a living for years. Let me tell you this before I even get started. I'm very excited, and I know I have some friends here, and I hope you'll be proud for me when I tell you this, but just last week, I just signed my first contract with HBO. So, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's a pretty good deal, I think. I pay them $18 a month and watch all the movies. I'm the one who thinks up all the weird questions, all the weird thoughts. Questions like, why is a chicken the only animal we can eat before it's born and after it's dead? Why does your garbage always weigh more than your groceries did? And what is it about being in a car alone makes everybody want to pick their nose? These are things that I wonder. And I knew when I was a little kid, I knew that I was not normal. I knew that the thoughts that I had were different from the thoughts that other little kids were having. I could see it in the eyes of my mom and my dad. I remember my mom saying things to me like, don't play with those arrows, they'll poke your eye out. Don't play with that stick, it'll poke your eye out. And I remember thinking, I'm 6 years old, but I remember thinking, you can't poke your eye out with a stick. You can poke it in. Poke it out, you got to run it up through your nose, up like this. I was kind of a smart aleck. I was too smart to be a smart aleck out loud, but I remember my dad getting on to me about something one day saying, hey, when Abraham Lincoln was your age, Abraham Lincoln had a job. When Abraham Lincoln was your age, Abraham Lincoln walked 12 miles through the snow to get to school. I didn't say it out loud, but I remember thinking, hey, when Abraham Lincoln was your age, he was president, okay? But I had a time in my life early on that I would see these strange looks from my parents because I suppose I was a strange little child. I had a thought process that was different from the other kids. In kindergarten, they'd be sitting there with the glue and gluing the construction paper chains together and playing very busily, and I'd be sitting there staring at the glue bottle, wondering, why doesn't this stuff stick to the inside? I mean, these are just thoughts that I had. I remember being in the grocery store with my mother one time, and my mother put some eggs in. I couldn't have been 4 years old. She put some eggs in the cart. And I said, Mama, what are those? And she said, well, those are eggs. I said, can I see them? And she said, sure. And she opened up the carton and she said, see, they're eggs. I said, wow. Did chickens lay those eggs? She said, yes, they did. I said, chickens laid those eggs right there? She said, yes, they did. I said, how did they get the chickens to sit so close together? And I know my mother looked at me as if I was not quite normal. People wonder, where do you get your sense of humor? And I think my dad was a Baptist minister, very, very intelligent Baptist minister, graduated from the seminary, magna cum laude, so smart guy. I think my dad, but maybe my grandmother. It could be my grandmother. My grandmother just turned 100 100 years old recently. Andalusia, Alabama. 100 years old, and and the newspaper came to interview her, and they asked my grandmother, so what's the greatest thing about being 100? And my grandmother said, no peer pressure. So maybe my grandmother. I think my dad, though. I always thought my dad was where I got my sense of humor, because being a Baptist minister, you either have a sense of humor or you lose it totally. When I turned 16, I asked my dad, I said, can I borrow the keys to the car? And this is my dad. We've been going around and around on this anyway. My dad said, I'll give you the keys to the car when you cut your hair. But I'm ready for this. You know, my father, the minister, I said, but Dad, Jesus had long hair. He said, yeah, and he walked everywhere he went, too. So I'm thinking probably my dad. Now, everybody said I was going to be a comedian when I was growing up. I mean, I was a little bitty kid, and people would say that. I think because of the strange thoughts I had or something, but people would literally say, oh, one day you're going to be a comedian. You're going to grow up and be a comedian. And isn't that amazing that I would hear that many times, and here we are. I wonder oftentimes what other kids hear and what people say to children, good and bad, and how accurate that becomes in the lives of these kids. But I heard that a lot. You're going to be a comedian one day. Well, one day you're going to be a comedian. Now, people ask, were you the class clown? I was not the class clown. To me, the class clown is the guy who runs naked across the football field in freezing weather. I was the one who talked him into doing it, okay? So I was not the class clown. I went to school to be a veterinarian. This is what I was going to do. I had decided I kind of wanted to be a comedian, but how do you do that? You know what I'm saying? I mean, how do you do that? You know what you do to become a doctor. You know what you do to become an attorney. There are steps you take. There are classes you take. There is a procedure you must complete to be a teacher or a pharmacist. But how do you become a comedian? You know, I mean, I started before there were comedy clubs everywhere, and so how do you do that? And so I went to school to be a veterinarian. I mean, that's what I decided I was going to do. I went to Auburn University, going to be a veterinarian. That's pretty much what I thought in every class I was in. Because I was there and I didn't really want to do it. You know, I mean, I thought maybe I'll be a veterinarian and a taxidermist, so I can say, either way, you get the dog back. But it was my intention to continue and find a way. There didn't seem to be a way, but I was thinking that maybe I could find a way to be a comedian. And I remember literally being in organic chemistry class my third year, and I looked up, and the professor was leaving, and the kids were leaving, and I looked down at my notebook, and I had a bunch of joke ideas written down. And I thought, what are you doing here? I mean, I had no clue what they had been talking about. And I thought, what are you doing here? So that was the day that I left. And people say, you quit school? No, I didn't quit. I left. There's a big difference in quitting and leaving. When you quit, you sign stuff, you tell people. I just left. I just never went back. And I decided I was going to start because I was paying for my own college. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Mom and Daddy weren't paying for my college. I was paying for my own. I was working as the night manager of a Zippy Mart. I was working at a Zippy Mart. I was the night manager. I don't know who I was managing. I was the only one there, but I go, all right, you cornflakes back on that shelf. But I was the night manager. My mom and dad were my greatest supporters. They told me, they said, hey, if this is what you want to do, if this is what you really want to do, then go after it and work hard at it. Be good at it. And if you're enjoying it, if you're happy with what you're doing, and you're working hard, then we'll be proud of you. If you want to dig ditches, just dig good ditches, and we'll be proud of you. That was my parents. Now, all the other people in my life, all the periphery people, all the aunts and uncles and next door neighbors, the people who had no skin in the game, so to speak, these people were going nuts. I mean, it's gonna be a disaster. Oh, your life is over. I mean, it was amazing. But of course, later, as I gathered some success, these were the people who said, "Oh, we knew all along you were gonna make it." So I started my career, and it was horrible. Frankly, it was horrible. I couldn't get any work. I was working. I had an amazing string of jobs. I worked in a bait shop for a while. I didn't have a car. You know what I'm saying? I had a Suzuki 100 that I would drive to work at 4 o'clock in the morning. I mean, oh, it was wonderful. You would have wanted to date me, you know. Suzuki, and I would open the shrimp shop open at 4 o'clock in the morning. I mean, I was a comedian, right? I'm a comedian. I would tell all my friends I'm a comedian. Of course, I was, in the daytime, 1, 2, I'm counting shrimp for every, but I'm a comedian. I'm only working one show every 2 or 3 months for $25 a night, but I'm a comedian. I worked for a while in an M&M factory, proofreader. Oh, you watch, you'll still be amazed. You look through them, you'll be amazed. They miss W's, and they're in there sometimes. I mean, I was playing some horrible places. I mean, some of these places you look at and you go, wow, a good coat of fire would do wonders for this building, But it was awful. And I'm trying, I'm trying to maintain some semblance of a normal life. I'm dating. Try dating on no money. Ladies, you are so unaware financially. Did you know, guys, that ladies have no idea what the numbers on the right side of a menu mean? I mean, I remember going out during that time. I remember one girl in particular sitting down and going, "Well, what'll you have?" She said, "Oh, I guess I'll have the steak and lobster." I'm like, "Well, guess again." Did you notice that ladies don't eat everything on their plate in a restaurant? Did you notice that? But guys eat everything on our plates. And it took me years to figure out why. And the answer is very simple. It's simply because a lady is just eating a steak, but a guy is eating $14.95, right? I mean, this is why we're so concerned when you stop eating. You're not through, are you? You're not through. Come on, you got $6 left on your plate here. Oh, I remember one time when you're broke, I mean, when you have zero money and seemingly zero prospects, everything is just so scary. I remember getting stopped I was stopped one night by a policeman, and before I tell you this, are there any in here? I mean, I know there's got to be some policemen in here, so... Oh, come on. There's thousands of people in there. There's got to be a policeman. But see, that's the thing. I can't tell. Who? Where? You? Okay. Now, yeah, see? Look at him. Look at him. He's not even raising his hand. What is your name? John. Was my father's name. Was John. Wow. I mean, just telling you, that was my father's name. Was John. So you're a policeman, and see, who knew? I mean, you see him over there. Right? Who knew? I mean, I didn't know he was a policeman. Did you know he was a policeman? No, because you can't tell. I mean, you have no uniform on. And here you are just like in here with us. And we didn't know, and I'm not sure that's very fair. There should be some method of knowing who we are and what we do. Like what do you do for a living? Insurance, okay? Insurance. Okay, so, like, what do you do? Snowplower. Seriously? Is that seriously what you do? As a snow plower? Huh. And once again, who knew? I mean, who knew? Who could tell And don't you think, I mean, there should be something a little more fair than that? Like what do you do? What do you do? A banker? Okay. I mean, see, we should have shirts that tell us what we do so that when we walk around, we can just kind of know, like the Izod shirts. We could use those. You know what I'm talking about? The little alligator on the shirt? Those are very expensive shirts, by the way. And I always think, why? I mean, because you can get plain ones that are just like them. The alligator goes on, it's like $15 more for the alligator. And what, the polo shirts, you know what I'm talking about? The little man on the horse? They're like $5 or $6 more than the Izod. Why? I figure maybe the man on the horse has an alligator on his shirt. I don't know. But if we had shirts that we had our own little symbols on, don't you think that would be good for us to be able to know? I mean, just like at a glance, like you're a banker, you can have a little dollar sign right there. I mean, that would be good. And we know, oh, she's a banker. You could have a little snowflake on yours. And John, a policeman, John, you could have a little glazed donut on yours. Maybe you're an undercover cop, so a plain donut. There we go. All right. But so here I am, and I gotta tell you, I'm scared of policemen anyway. I mean, this just like terrifies me, and I don't know why. But when I was broke, when I had no money, it really terrified me because I'm thinking, a ticket. I'm driving, looking at a map, and it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm looking at a map, and there's no cars on the road anywhere. And I'm looking, and I'm trying to figure out and I'm going really slow. And I guess, in retrospect, I had kind of veered or weaved, whatever the word is. I had kind of gone, I'd hit the thing, and all of a sudden, blue lights, scare me to death because I'm thinking, immediately I'm thinking, what have I done? I'm certainly not speeding. What have I done here? And I roll down the window and I turn on the lights in the car because, you know what I'm saying, don't want to scare anybody. Don't anybody scared of me. And he comes up to, and this is like every bad dream I ever had about a policeman. This guy's like 6'9", hair on the palms, the whole thing. I mean, and he comes up, and this is what he says to me. He says, "Can I see your license?" So I hand him my license. He says, and I'm telling you this actually happened. He says, "This your real name?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Are you sure it's your real name?" So I'm thinking, well, he's like hard of hearing or something. I said, "Yes." And he said, "Mr. Andrews, have you been drinking?" I said, "Well, no, sir." He said, "Are you sure you hadn't been drinking?" I said, "No." He says, "Step outside the car, please." And I'm like, oh, great. Welcome to town. I mean, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning, I can see, all those Georgia chain gang movies come back into my mind. My wife will never see me again, And so I step outside the car, and the guy says, "Mr. Andrews, I'm going to have to give you a field sobriety test." So I'm like, well, all right, sure, here we are out on the interstate in front of God and everybody, but yeah, let's do it. And he says, "Extend your arms, please." So I do this, and he says, "Now touch your nose." I said, "Well, that should be no problem. Big target, Right? I mean, I figure I'm going to be funny with him. I'm just going to lighten the mood a little bit. That should be no problem. Big target. He said, "I'll do the talking. Capiche?" Capiche? I didn't even know what that meant. Then he says, and this is the part that still just that kills me. He says, "Mr. Andrews, do your alphabet." And I thought, oh no, I hadn't done this in 30 years. I'm not sure I can do it without the song. But I do. I say, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, and T, U, V, W, X, and Y, and Z. And then, I don't know why I did it, but I heard myself saying to this cop, now I've said my ABCs, tell me what you think of me. And he laughed and let me go, so. Occasionally I do shows, just to let you know. I mean, this is not one, but very occasionally now I did a show not too long ago for the National Wild Turkey Federation. I mean, 5,000. And one of my friends said, like, people drinking bourbon? It's like, no. The hunters, the hunters. There are like 5,000 hunters in the audience, and people go, oh, hunting, huh? And I just did the show for them, and I do shows for the other people too. I did an animal rights barbecue not too long ago, so that was good. Then I actually got a pretty good job. I started working on cruise ships. I started working and in fact, I've done over 100 cruises. Can you believe that? Over 100 weeks of my life on a cruise ship, which is pretty strange. Just taking a break here. Remember that? Did you do that when you were a little kid? I used to do that all the time. It drove my mother crazy. Of course, I was breastfeeding at the time. So here I am, working on a ship. Calm down. Shh, please. This is not a show. So here I am working on a cruise ship. And cruise ships are great. I mean, they're great. They're different. You guys been on a ship? Anybody been on a ship? Yeah? Okay. A few of you? It's different, isn't it? I mean, you been on one? Yeah, what's your name? No, here? What? Say what? Oh, that's my mother's name. It's my mother's name. So you've been on a ship, and that's not like people think. Because most people think the Love Boat, but it's really not because of the old people that are there, right? I mean, we can say that, old people. I mean, because they're there. I mean, there are people who just got married and old people, and that's pretty much it on a ship. It's newlyweds or nearly deads, one or the other there. I mean, the average age on a ship is deceased. And we can say that because nobody in here, nobody's going to be offended by that. Because nobody in here is over 150 years of age. And so when I'm talking old, I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, you don't put a glass of water anywhere. They'll put their teeth in it every time. And here I am on the ship, and it's amazing to me that people is like, they lose their brains. I've been asked some of the dumbest questions. I've been asked, do the entertainers sleep on the ship too? Does the ship have its own electrical supply? No, we drag an extension cord from Miami. What are you thinking? I had a lady ask me one day, she said, is the water in the toilet salt water or fresh? I said, I don't know, I haven't tasted it lately. I'm standing out on the deck with this guy, and this guy's got his eyes on the pool, and of course, as the ship sways back and forth, the water in the pool sways back and forth. And so this guy's looking at her, he says, Andy, the water in the pool, is it salt water or fresh? I said, well, it's salt water. They pump it in from the ocean. He said, oh, that's why it's so rough. I had a guy ask me one day, he said, so where do you go from here? I said, well, I go to Dallas, then Denver for a couple of days, and then to Chicago. He said, on another ship? I'm walking through the purser's lobby late one night. There's this little old lady, cute as she could be. She looked kind of confused. I said, "Can I help you find something?" She said, "I've lost my cabin." I said, "Well, tell me what your cabin number is. Maybe I can help you find it." She did, and I said, "Come on, I'm going right by there. Come on, and you can walk with me." So she put her arm in my arm, and we're walking down the hall. And she says, "You know your way around this ship pretty good. You must have been on here before." I said, "Yes, ma'am. I've been on this ship many times." She said, "Oh, what do you do for a living? You can afford so many cruises." So I'm thinking, she doesn't know who I am. So I figured, I'm going to have a little fun with her. I said, "Well, I'm a gigolo." And she looks up at me, and before I can say anything, a lady walks around the corner who had seen my show the night before. She said, "Kid, last night you were fantastic." A lot of explaining to do there. Hey, you know, one of the good things that happened for me on the cruise ships was I got a lot of time. I mean, I had a lot of spare time. I learned how to juggle on cruise ships, you know, because they put fruit in your room, and I had a lot of time because it's like, I mean, at one point I was on ships for literally 14 weeks in a row. And I'm just kidding about the old people, kind of. Unless you're on an Alaskan cruise, by the way. An Alaskan cruise, it's really, really, it's old people. I mean, because there's nothing to do at all on an Alaskan cruise. I mean, on the Caribbean cruise, there's stuff to do. I mean, it's limbo night. It's country western night. There's beer drinking contest on the back deck. There's the pillow fight on the pole over the pool. I mean, there's just amazing, fun things to do on a Caribbean cruise. On an Alaskan cruise, the scenery is beautiful, but there's nothing to do. I mean, you just pretty much sit on a deck chair under a blanket looking at mountains and going, ooh, I mean, that's it, you know? And so older people tend to go on these Alaskan cruises. I had a friend of mine recently say, "Hey, I want to go on an Alaskan cruise." I said, "No, you don't." She said, "Yeah, I really do." I said, "No, I promise you don't. You don't. I mean, there's nothing to do. The people are so incredible." Do you know I was on an Alaskan cruise? I'm not kidding you. In 1 week, we had 11 people die. I mean, in 1 week. But I mean, you know, you put 1,600 people whose average age is 80 or so on a ship, it's just going to be somebody's time. And two of them in my show. Oh, it was horrible. I mean, I'm literally, I get through with my show and everybody stands up and leaves, except for 2 of them. I mean, one guy right here and one guy right over here. And of course, that was the talk of the ship. You know, everybody talking about, "Oh, you got to see this Andrews kid. He's killing them," you know. It's all great. But one of the things about being on a ship is you have a lot of time to do whatever you want. Because 14 weeks on the same ship, you know, they're bringing new people on every week, but you're not new. So it's like the same meal on Tuesday at noon as it was last Tuesday and the Tuesday before. It's the same movie in the theater week after week after week. It's like Groundhog Day at sea is what this is like. It's over and over. And so one of the things I started doing, I started writing. And I started writing stories about where I grew up and when I grew up and the kids I grew up with. And I wrote another story about the town that we grew up in, and I wrote another story about the town now. And because pretty much everybody's still there, I'm the only one who escaped. But I put together a series of short stories and put them in a book called Tales from Sawyerton Springs. And now, Tales from Sawyerton Springs is a book that I wrote actually in spare time. And I put these little stories together because they reminded me of my childhood. And I want to read one to you today, and I think that this will bring back memories of your own. It was the first day of Little League practice. I was 11 years old, and this year I was going to be a starter at second base. As we milled around, one could easily pick out the kids from last year's team: Lee Payton, Kevin Perkins, Steve Krotzer, Philip Johnson, Charles Raymond Floyd, and of course, me. We all had on last year's hats. They were off-white with a dark blue bill and a big FNB on the front. First National Bank, our sponsor, would be giving everyone new hats. We knew that. But in the meantime, we wanted to make sure that our new coach could tell the veterans from the rookies. None of us had met our new coach. His name was Mr. Simpson. He was, we were told, new to the area. New to the area and new in town were two different things. If someone was new in town, that generally meant they had moved from some place we had heard of and were probably still within driving distance of their cousins. New to the area, however, was a hint that this person was from the north. Living as we did in the southern part of Alabama, north to me was Birmingham. At the time, I suppose I was somewhat suspicious of people from the north. This created an intense curiosity about Mr. Simpson, almost a feeling of danger. After all, I had been told more than once that these people were nice, but different. The "but different" part was always said with a raised eyebrow. Mr. Simpson parked his station wagon and gathered the equipment from the back. Bats, balls, helmets, catcher's gear, it was all there. We were watching from the backstop, peering through the chicken wire as though he were some wild animal at the zoo. We noticed a boy with him. The boy had red hair and more freckles I had seen on any human since my Aunt Nancy Jane, and she had freckles on her fingernails. The boy, we figured, was the coach's son, since Mr. Simpson also had red hair and more than his share of freckles. "Hi, boys," Mr. Simpson said as he dumped the equipment near home plate. "My name is Hankin Simpson. I'm your new coach." I glanced to my right. Kevin Perkins was smirking and looking at me. Kevin was kind of a smart aleck, and I knew what he was thinking. Hankin? Where did he come from? Putting his hand on the shoulder of the red-headed boy, Mr. Simpson continued, "I want you to meet my son. This is Hankin Jr." I didn't dare look toward Kevin. I didn't need to. I can hear him smirking from where I was. "Now, boys," the coach continued, "I'm new to the area." Well, I thought, that explains Hankin. "But I'm sure," he said, "it's going to be a great season, okay? Okay, so before we begin practice, everybody take a rap." And with that, he clapped his hands and busied himself arranging the equipment. We shuffled our feet and looked at each other. What, we wondered, did he want us to do? Take a what? A rap? What was a rap? Hankin Jr., we saw, had begun to trot around the field, and figuring he knew what he was doing, we trotted after him. "Rap is a northern word," whispered Philip as we jogged along. "It means to run." I wasn't sure whether to believe him or not. Kevin was a smart aleck, but Philip Johnson made things up. He was what 5-year-olds called a storyteller, what we called a fibber, and what adults called a liar. He could look you right in the eye, tell you a fib, and he would be so convincing that you never doubted him. Even though I had never trusted him, I kept him as a friend because I heard my dad tell my mom that he was sure to become president one day. Back at home plate, all out of breath from running a rap, we gathered around Mr. Simpson, quite sure he would now assign positions. We veterans thrust our caps toward his face, a virtual sea of FNBs, silently pleading with the man not to look at one of us and say, "Right field." Since time began, all little leaguers have had a fear of right field. There are 9 positions on a baseball diamond, and in the glamour department, right field ranks dead last. Most batters are right-handed and hit the ball to left field. Therefore, a coach who wants to avoid long losing streaks will naturally put his weakest player in right. I'd had my brush with this humiliation 2 years earlier as the weak link for Henley's hardware store. Green hat, white H. Standing in right field game after game with nary a ball hit my way, I never believed the adults who told me I was an integral part of the team. I couldn't catch, but I wasn't stupid. A permanent residence in right field was an embarrassment. It was a curse. I was certain I had been branded for the rest of my life. I could just imagine myself as a grown-up going to a job interview and being told, "I'm sorry, but there's just no place for you in the space program. We see on your record you played right field." "Boys," Mr. Simpson began, "we're going to be a winner this year. I'm excited about this team. Before we get started, I want to check you out at certain positions. Don't worry if you're new to the game. On my team, everyone gets to pray. Excuse me? Did he say pray? I looked at Steve Kreutzer. He was jabbing Charles Raymond Floyd in the ribs. Lee Payton was jabbing Kevin, and Philip jabbed me. I know this is just practice, the coach continued, but no matter. I want you to pray your hearts out. This team, I thought, is in trouble. Either someone had told our new leader that last year we lost 17 out of 23 games, or he took one look at us and decided we were a bunch of rejects. What it boiled down to, I was beginning to believe, was that if we were to have a winning season, Mr. Simpson had settled on prayer as our only hope. 30 minutes later, we were in the positions that would be ours, more or less, for the rest of the year. I was at second base, so I was happy. Steve was at first, Kevin at third. Lee was our catcher, and Charles Raymond stood in right field with the other kids who couldn't catch. Philip Johnson, meanwhile, pouted at shortstop. He wanted to pitch. Actually, we wanted him to pitch too. But as soon as we had seen there was a Hankin Simpson Jr., we knew that he would not. Every member of First National Bank was acutely aware of that age-old Little League law: if the coach has a son, the team has a pitcher. This has become such an accepted part of coaching methodology, no one ever thinks to question it. A Little League coach is usually the father of one of the players, and he always has a blind spot where his son is concerned. Can the kid throw strikes? Has he got a curveball? Does he trip over his own feet? It doesn't really matter. He's the coach's son, so put him on the mound and call him a pitcher. We practiced hard that first day trying to show Mr. Simpson our stuff. We dove for grounders, swung for the fence, and generally showed as much hustle as we could muster. We didn't seem to be a vastly improved team from the year before. I blew a sure double play. Our new pitcher was throwing the ball over the backstop, and Charles Raymond got hit in the head by a pop fly and cried. Coach Simpson didn't say much, but when he did, he was still saying things we didn't understand. Take another rap. Pray hard. Pray hard. We were a confused group of kids. It was at the end of practice, however, during the compulsory pep talk, when everything became crystal clear. There's one thing about this game you can count on, he said. If you don't learn to watch the baseball hit the baseball glove, you will never be an excellent baseball player. Well, we were stunned. After 2.5 hours of total darkness, we suddenly understood. A rap, pray. He had wanted us to take a lap. He had wanted us to play hard. How could we have not figured it out? From the depths of a pep talk to which no one was listening, like a bolt from the blue, those weird words all came together and made sense. Certain words from his last sentence jumped out at us like sparks from a bonfire. Blah, 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 run, blah, 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 baseball, blah, blah, baseball, grub, blah, 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 excellent baseball prayer. It was now an undeniable fact that had become apparent to all of us in one fell swoop. Coach Simpson could not say his L's. We stood, silently exchanging furtive glances as Hankin Jr. and Sr. got into the car and drove away. No one had spoken a word yet, but we suspected we had been the recipients of a miracle from God. We could scarcely contain our collective excitement. To a group of 11-year-old boys, nothing beats having a human target at which to laugh. Double the fun if the boys are able to mimic the target, and triple if the unfortunate target happens to be an adult. Kevin was smirking again. We shuffled around and snickered a few minutes. Then it started. Charles Raymond said, "I'm a baseball player." Steve said, "No, you ain't. You're a right fielder." Kevin said, "Take a rap. Everybody just take a rap right now." Lee said, "Coach Simpson, I like him. I really do." Philip said, "My name is Firrup. Firrup. Get it? My name is Firrup." Kevin said, "Take a rap. Everybody take it." And we just laughed and laughed. It continued that way until we were exhausted. Finally able to breathe at last, We lounged in the dirt around home plate. Philip spoke first. "I think he's Oriental," he said. Oriental people use the letter R in place of the letter L when they speak English because they don't have a letter L in their own language. That's why he does it. Coach Simpson is Oriental. Remember? He said he was new to the area. He's Oriental. Oriental, Charles Raymond asked. "Isn't that when you know your way around?" Kevin smirked. "No, stoop," he said. "He means Japanese, right?" Kevin glanced my way. I wanted to tell Philip that I'd never seen a 6'3", 240-pound, red-haired, freckle-faced Japanese guy before. That's what I wanted to say, but Philip was looking at me with such an air of self-confidence that I knew the truth didn't have a chance against such a convincing opponent. I was about to give it a try anyway when suddenly Lee giggled. "What?" we demanded. "I was just thinking," Lee said as he tried to talk through his laughter. "I was just thinking that one day I'm going to be rounding third." He stopped and laughed. "I'm going to be rounding third, headed toward this here home plate," and he was really laughing now. "Tell us," we said. "I'm going to be headed toward this here home plate, and Coach Simpson's going to yell, 'Shride, re-shride.'" We never mentioned the Oriental theory again. Kevin told me privately one day that he thought Philip was full of mess. I took that to be Kevin's way of saying he didn't believe Coach Simpson was Japanese either. Not that it would have mattered. One of our best friends, Peter Chin, was Japanese or something. He said his L's perfectly, too, except, of course, when he was mimicking Coach Simpson with us. Several memories of that year still remain clear in my mind. To this day, Philip Johnson is Philip to everyone who played on that team. And no one has forgotten the game that Lee Payton rounded third, headed for home, and fell down before he got there, laughing, because Coach Simpson really did yell, "Shride, re-shride." If I had to choose one capsule of time during that season to carry with me for the rest of my life, it'd have to be the day that Steve Krotzer got kicked off the team. Maybe kicked off is too harsh. Actually, he was transferred to another team because the league president found that Steve's family was sitting in another district. It was a messy situation. Steve had played with us for 4 years, 2 years on Henley's hardware store and 2 with First National Bank. Now they were sending him to play with the team, Shrimp Boat Restaurant, near his home. We were sick. Steve was our friend and a darn good first baseman. He didn't want to go, and we didn't want him to leave. But that last day did arrive. When practice was over, Coach Simpson gathered us around the pitcher's mound. He had his hand on Steve's shoulder. "Boys," he said, "this is a sad day. We're going to miss Steve. He's a fine bar player and a fine young man." Steve was close to tears. We were too. "I don't understand the inner workings of the system," Coach Simpson continued. "And I'm not sure why this has happened, but I do know one thing. And look at me when I say this, because this is important. I want every one of you to know that this was not Steve's fault. As a group, Steve included, we jumped as if 10,000 volts of electricity had passed through our bodies. Did he say what we thought he said? Surely not. "No," he continued, "this was not Steve's fault, and it wasn't my fault." Yes, he did most definitely, absolutely, too, say what we thought he said. Oh, sure, we knew what he meant. We'd been unconsciously translating Simpsonisms all year. He was telling us it wasn't Steve's fault. But that wasn't what we were hearing. It wasn't Steve's parents' fault either. I guess it was nobody's fault. It was too good to be true. Of all the words in the world guaranteed to make an 11-year-old boy laugh, only one of them was by itself at the top of the list. And our coach, an adult, was saying that word over and over and over. If it's anyone's fart, it's a system's fart. So don't pin the fart on any one person, because it just isn't their fart. Well, I'm not exaggerating when I say we were literally laying on the ground. We were crying. Coach Simpson thought we really were crying and became concerned. He became desperate as he tried to comfort us. And the more he explained that it wasn't our fart, the more out of hand things became. Soon, tears were rolling down Coach Simpson's face, too. Several of us felt badly about that later, but as Kevin said, hey, don't worry about it. It ain't our fart. I haven't seen Coach Simpson in years. Kevin Perkins and Steve Kratzer were in my wedding. Lee Payton went to medical school and returned to practice in our town. Charles Raymond Floyd, our right fielder, was a late bloomer. He was made second-team All-American and played 3 years of minor league ball. I've totally lost track of Philip Johnson. The last I heard, he was a used car salesman and mayor of a small town in Louisiana. I still remember us all as we were that summer. I can close my eyes and hear the explosions of laughter as we reacted to something that was, to us, the funniest thing in the world. And I feel a little sad when I think that when we were 11 years old, we may have laughed harder than we ever would again. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. You know, I'm very proud of that book. Have a seat. I'm very proud of that book. There are 27 stories in that book just like that. So it's a good opportunity to have something to read with your family. You know, I put that book together as I got going on it because I determined that there were a lot of things in the United States that adults could enjoy. And there are a lot of things that kids could enjoy, but very few things that adults and children could enjoy together. So I created Tales from Sawyerton Springs so that parents and children could actually read together, listen to something together, and have a good time together. I'm very glad you liked that story. Thank you very much. You know, just as my career, as it were, started picking up a little bit of steam, something amazing happened. My parents died, both of them. In the same year, my mom died of cancer and my dad was killed in a car accident. This was not a good year, as you can imagine. I had a 14-year-old younger sister that I moved into a home with my grandmother who had Alzheimer's. We had no money, not a lot of insurance on a Baptist minister. And I took my part of the insurance money and being the financial genius that I was, I bought a trailer with it. Place for me to live, place to operate out of, place to become a comedian. And it was pretty rough. It was not a mobile home, it was a trailer. There's a big difference in a mobile home and a trailer. This was definitely a trailer. It was a good trailer. It had a big hole about the size of a basketball right in the kitchen floor. So I never had to open the door to sweep out the trailer, just sweep toward the hole. But things kind of went from bad to worse, and I ended up losing the trailer. You know, it was a time in my life that I didn't have any relatives that I could say, hey, I need $50 here. My electricity was cut off first, then the gas was cut off, and I lived for 3 months without gas or electricity in the trailer, and finally the trailer was gone. And for a period of my life, of my adult life, I was literally, it wasn't a term at the time, but I was homeless. I would stay with a friend for a couple of days and then sleep under a pier in Gulf Shores, Alabama for a couple of days, and then go stay with a friend for a night, and then sleep under a pier again out on the beach. And I didn't have any work. I didn't have any money. Some of the older people in my life seemed determined to let me learn this lesson about the choices that I had made to become a comedian, and this was certainly what was coming to me. And it would probably be the best thing in the world for me to go ahead and be forced back into normality, because I certainly wasn't normal. Nobody that had made the choices that I had made could have been considered normal. But see, what these people didn't know is that I had no interest in being normal. Most of my friends already had houses and they had jobs, but I didn't want a house like they had, and I didn't want jobs like they had. I felt led to do something different. I felt led to be a part of something bigger. I felt led to touch people. It has never been, believe me, it has never been my goal to perform and keep people laughing the entire time. My goal has always been to touch people in a unique way, to be part of a thin thread that weaves from me to you and out of this arena. My goal has always been to change lives. So here I am, literally, homeless, and I'm faced with the decision of retreat, of backing up, of doing what everybody else thought I should do. And an old man told me one day, he said, "Son, you hang in there, because one decision that you make during the toughest time in your life, one decision that you make can literally change the world." And I remember thinking, really? One decision that I make could change the world? Especially now? And I rolled that over and over in my mind as I would lay underneath the pier at night trying to go to sleep, cold or hot, in the sand. And I'm thinking, here I am, baby. One decision that this boy makes could literally change the world. And I would laugh. But I would believe. And then I found a story that gave me hope. So here we are, on July 2nd, 1862, a hot mid-morning, with this man, now a 34-year-old colonel in the Union Army. He is deployed at the extreme left edge of a line of 80,000 men that stretches from a hill called Little Round Top all the way into a town in Pennsylvania called Gettysburg. The line of men was stretched across this area, which, if you've ever been to Gettysburg, you'll know this is not one huge open area. This is a series of fields and fence rows and rock-strewn valleys. And these 80,000 men were stretched for miles. The professor, now the colonel, a man named Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, had been placed there earlier that day by another colonel, Colonel Vincent. And Colonel Vincent told Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, "You must hold here. You are the extreme left edge of this army. And you must not let them through. If they get through here, everything will be lost. We're not high enough up on the hill, Chamberlain. And if you let them through here, they're going to come through. They will breach you, come around, and come down on the entire Union Army from behind. And they'll kill us all. You must hold. No matter what happens, you must hold here." So the morning was spent throwing up a breastwork of rocks, a little more than 100 yards long, a little less than waist high. A big, huge, flat rock boulder in the middle, about 25 yards down this way, 75, 80 yards this way. And the men could see the gatherings of the Confederate soldiers in the fields below. Chamberlain and his regiment, the 20th Maine, hunkered down behind the wall and readied themselves for the first charge, which came from members of the 15th and 47th Alabama regiments of the Army of the Potomac, Lee's boys. As they came up the hill, yelling, screaming through the trees, a heavy slope uphill, Chamberlain's men fired down, but didn't even hold them off well on the first charge. Pushed them back when they were 50 or 60 yards away, and the Confederates went back down the hill and readied themselves for another charge. On the second charge, cannon fire and rifles literally slaughtered 20% of Chamberlain's men. The third charge, Chamberlain was hit by a bullet right in his belt buckle. Knocked him down. He got up and kept fighting. The men were laying over the wall now, using their fallen brothers as shields from the Confederate bullets. On the fourth charge, they almost made it to the wall, and on the fifth charge they did. Chamberlain later wrote that his men were hitting the Confederates with their fist. They breached the wall in the fifth charge, but somehow they managed to push them back down the hill again. And at this point, Tom Chamberlain, Joshua's younger brother, came to him and said, "Lawrence," he called him Lawrence. He said, "Lawrence, the men are out of ammunition. The most anybody has is one shell left. What do we do?" And Chamberlain said, "Take the ammunition from the dead." And his younger brother said, "We've already done it." Sergeant Tozer came up and said, Colonel Chamberlain, sir, we got to retreat. We got to get out of here. Colonel Vincent's battery has been slaughtered. Colonel Vincent's dead." Chamberlain said, "What about Hazlett? Can Hazlett reinforce?" He said, "Hazlett's dead. His battery's gone." And as he stood there, a lieutenant walked up and said, "Sir, they're gathering again." And Chamberlain looked down, and yes, they were, the 15th and 47th Alabama regiments, with some additions now from a Texas regiment. Chamberlain was down to less than 100 men with no ammunition. And as the Confederates massed, his younger brother said, "We got to get out of here. We got to leave." But Chamberlain knew that retreat was not an option. This is a man standing in the breach of history and didn't even know it. I wish and I wonder if somehow he had an inkling then that one decision he could make would literally change the world. But when his younger brother said, "Here they come! Here they come! Lawrence, what do we do?" And the sergeant said, "We got to get out of here, sir. We got to go." Chamberlain knew, no, we can't go. We can't leave. We can't stay. And he knew He knew that failure was the only option of a man who accepts the status quo. He knew his only choice was not backward, it wasn't here, it was forward. And as his men pleaded with him to leave, and as Tom Chamberlain, his younger brother, finally said, "For God's sakes, Lawrence, give an order!" he said, "Fix bayonets." And they looked at him like he was crazy. And he turned to Sergeant Tozer and he said, "Great right wheel. Great right wheel forward." And the lieutenant turned to the sergeant and he said, "What's a great right wheel?" And the sergeant said, "He means to charge, son. A great right wheel is an all-out charge. Fix bayonets!" And they put them on. And Chamberlain jumped up on the wall and he swung his sword and he swung it down toward the advancing troops. And he said, "Charge! Charge! 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 Get them! Charge!" And they poured over the wall into history. 100 men down the slope. Well, when the regiments from Alabama and Texas looked up and saw them coming over the wall, it made absolutely no sense that this might possibly be the same group of people. A beaten regiment does not charge. Surely they've had reinforcements. Surely there's more of them coming. They literally dropped their weapons and ran. Chamberlain ran up to a colonel of the 47th Alabama, laid his saber on the collarbone of his opposing officer and said, "You, sir, are my prisoner." The colonel turned his Navy Colt around and said, "Yes, sir, I am." 100 men captured over 600 men. 100 men without ammunition captured over 600. A little later, one of the privates was standing guard around 100 of the enemy. And as Chamberlain walked by, he said, "Sir, I have no ammunition in my rifle." And Chamberlain said, "I know that, son. For God's sakes, don't tell them." One decision that you make can literally change the world. Of course, that is a nice little story about a battle. But to understand its implications, time has given us a view that we didn't formerly have. Historians, you see, are aware now that the South was winning the war and that the Union was on its last legs. If the South had won at Gettysburg, the war literally would have been over. The South had taken Fort Sumter. They had won at Manassas, and then at the Battle of 7 Days, and then again at Bull Run, at Chancellorsville, at Fredericksburg. And if Gettysburg had fallen, it would have all been over. So you could make a case that this one place on Little Round Top, where Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain charged in the face of desperation, you could make a case that this man changed the outcome, not of this battle, but of the whole war. Historians agree that had the South won the war, today we would not be one country, we would be 3 countries. We would have a Confederate States of America, a United States of America, and Texas and the desert Southwest would have formed their own country. We would be 3 countries. Now, when you understand what that means, you understand that when Hitler ran roughshod across Europe, because there was a United States to stand in the breach, history had been changed, not then, but years before. That when Hirohito systematically invaded the islands of the Pacific, there was a superpower in the world, a United States, to put that down. When Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, and put the world at risk, there was a United States of America to take care of that too. And now, right now, once again, there is a superpower to battle and defeat terrorism across the world. And only because one man made a decision so many years ago to charge. One man. And one decision that you make can literally change the world. Now I want to tell you something. Sometimes it can be strange making decisions in the face of tough times. But you need to be aware of something that most people are not even cognizant of, and that is the term hedge of thorns. You see, Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain that day literally had a hedge of thorns around him. This was a man with a hedge of thorns who had divine protection placed upon him until he had accomplished what he was supposed to do. And I can promise you that whatever it is that you are to accomplish, there will be divine protection placed around you, a hedge of thorns around you, until you do what you were supposed to do. There is divine protection around a person who is destined to make a difference. Because one person, remember, one person can literally make a difference in the outcome of the future of the world. So a hedge of thorns. I have something here that is absolutely incredible. Proof of the hedge of thorns that was around Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain that day. This was a man who was breveted a brigadier general at Fredericksburg, and later in the war was made a major general. He went home to Maine after being the one selected by Lincoln and Grant to select the men involved in receiving the arms of Lee and his men as they rode into Appomattox Courthouse. And Chamberlain shocked the world again when he had the men salute Lee as he rode in. People asked, "Why are you saluting the enemy?" He said, "The war is over. They are no longer the enemy. We are a United States of America, and they deserve our respect. We are moving forward. We are no longer staying with the status quo. We are moving forward." And he told them, once again, that failure is the only option of a person who accepts the status quo. He went home to Maine and was elected governor in the largest landslide in history to this day of a gubernatorial election in that state. And years later, this letter arrived at the State House addressed to the Honorable Governor Joshua L. Chamberlain. "Dear Sir, I want to tell you of a little passage in the Battle of Round Top, Gettysburg, concerning you and me, which I am now glad of. Twice in that fight, I had your life in my hands. I got a safe place between two rocks and drew bead fair and square on you. You were standing in the open behind the center of your line, full exposed. I knew by your rank, your uniform, your actions, and I thought it a mighty good thing to put you out of the way. I rested my gun on the rock and took steady aim. I started to pull the trigger, but some strange notion stopped me. Then I got ashamed of my weakness and went through the same motions again. I had you, perfectly certain. But that same strange something shut right down on me. I couldn't pull the trigger and gave it up. That is, your life. I'm glad of it now and hope you are. Yours truly, a member of the 15th Alabama." A hedge of thorns, and that same hedge of thorns is around you. A person destined to make a difference because one decision that you make can literally change the world. Well, here I was. My mom and dad had died. Plenty of opportunities to quit, but I decided, no. If one decision I make can change the world, I'm going to provide something for people. I'm going to be a part of people's lives. and we're going to do something truly great together. So I began to change my career. I began to learn what comedy was all about. I wasn't going to just stand up and goof around anymore. I was literally going to become an expert in comedy. I wanted to determine where comedy came from. And so I started by determining 2 questions that absolutely brought humor into almost every situation. 2 questions are, what is stupid about this and why? You can use these if you want to. People say, well, that must be the hardest thing in the world, to stand up there and do this. Well, that's not hard. This is not hard. I mean, hard is if you're the first person ever to do something. That's hard. I mean, if you're the first person to drink milk, I mean, that's a very simple thing. But if you're the first, I mean, there's a lot of unknown in that. If you're the first person to drink milk, I mean, can you see a couple of guys standing around ages ago, and one of them says, see that thing hanging under that cow? You squeeze it, I'll drink what comes out. Or the first person to ever eat an egg. Next thing comes out of that chicken's butt, I'm going to eat it. And then he had to convince his friends. Oh, it's good. It's really tasty. So what is stupid about this and why? 2 major questions I had. What is stupid? Now, you can find this anywhere. You just apply that question to the things you see, and a lot of times the answers you're going to get are going to be funny. I'm driving down the highway the other day, and I see a sign that says, are you an adult and can't read? Dial 1-800. What is stupid about this? I'm going through a Burger King drive-up. And I see the sign on the drive-up. It says, picture menus available upon request. Like, So I go up to the drive-up window, and I just have to ask. I said, excuse me, I saw the sign there, picture menus available upon request. Who are those for? And she said, well, those are for people who can't read. So I said, well, how do they know that you have them? And she looked at me like I'm an idiot and said, the sign. I got a new Visa card not too long ago. I go in and I forgot to sign the card, and I use it for the first time. The lady scans it, and she lays it down in front of me and says, you forgot to sign your card. I said, oh, I'm sorry. So I had the receipt there. I signed the receipt. Then I signed the card, and she picks it up and goes, what is stupid about this? The other question that you can ask is why? Just why? Because a lot of times the answers you get are pretty funny. Now, Polly and I read together every night before we go to bed. Other night we're reading in Proverbs. This is just an example of why. We're reading in Proverbs, and in Proverbs it says King Solomon had 700 wives. Well, that's exactly what Polly said. Why? She said, why would anybody have 700 wives? And I said, I don't know, maybe he was hoping he'd go home and find one of them in a good mood. And she told me, she said, don't you ever do that in a show. So I don't. Just goofing off like this, though, I think we're fine. I started finding humor in everything. You know, I mean, I used to watch a lot of TV, and I finally figured I didn't need to watch TV to find funny stuff. I just watched the commercials. I mean, the commercials just blew my mind. You see the commercials, you see the one where it says, doctors agree, 70% of Americans suffer from hemorrhoids. 70% suffer. I suppose 30% enjoy the darn things. You seen the commercials that'll scare you? What's that they say? For Charmin bathroom tissue, it's irresistible. What does that mean? If I use it, I won't be able to stop? And what's that they say for X-Lax? Works while you sleep. That scares me too. I mean, that's got to be better than caffeine, right? Oh, don't nod off. You know what the worst commercial on television is? Now, this is the worst. This commercial is just the worst. And forgive me, if I was doing a show, I wouldn't even talk about this because this is horrible. It's the Depends. You know what I'm talking about? Depends, the adult diapers. I mean, here's what, it's the June Allison lady, and here's what she says. She says, for people with bladder control problems. I mean, she says that on TV. She says bladder. Then she says, and this is the part that, I mean, if you don't want to hear this, just close your ears. Then she says, even for people without bladder control problems. And I'm wondering, who are these people? Are these like the laziest people in the world? Are these people standing around going, you know, I don't feel like walking all the way to the bathroom. TV's not like what we used to have anyway. We used to have great TV shows. We used to have, remember the animal shows? We had great animal shows when we grew up. I mean, kids today, they don't have, I mean, what, Ninja Turtles, that don't count. I mean, the stuff, I mean, we had Flipper and Gentle Ben and Flicka. Remember, yeah, I was doing this one night. And I said, oh, the animal show. And one lady said, Leave It to Beaver. Oh, yeah, I remember that animal show. Lassie was the one that started it all. Remember Lassie? You remember watching that show and you never could really figure out what was going on? Remember how that used to just drive you crazy? Because my dog's not like this. What's going on? I mean, because you watch the show and you realize that the dog understood everything the people said. And the people understood everything the dog said. Remember how Timmy would talk to Lassie, Lassie, go get Mom and Grandpa. Tell them I'm down by the beaver pond and tell them I'm stuck under a pine tree. It's a loblolly pine tree, not the longleaf variety. They're on the red tractor, Lassie, not the blue tractor. On the North 40, not the South 40, but the North 40. Go, Lassie, go! And Lassie'd be getting it across that field. She'd be getting it across it, and they'd see Lassie coming. They'd automatically know, here comes Lassie. Looks like trouble. And then Lassie would get up there and say, what is it, Lassie? What is it, girl? Woof. Oh, my God, Timmy's down by a beaver pond under a pine tree. And now I'm a dad. I'm a dad. And this is the greatest thing in my life. And now I understand daddom. You know, I understand daddom a little more. I had one, now I am one. And there are so many differences that I knew growing up, differences in dads and moms. Dads were genetically programmed in some of their driving things. They're genetically programmed to not ever have to go to the bathroom in the car. Did you know that dads were genetically programmed to never ask for directions? I know you know that they don't, but did you know that was a genetic program never to ask for direction? Did you know that from the moment of conception, dads have been programmed to never ask for direction? You think about the moment of conception. There's one egg, there's 10 million sperm, only one gets there. They don't ask for directions. Right? But then you get in the car, and moms have that distance thing that they don't get. Where moms don't, well, let's put it this way. Dad's driving, you're fine. You're fine, you're absolutely comfortable, you're confident, nothing's wrong, and out of nowhere the woman sitting next to you gives you a, oh my God! And to a dad, it's like, in the ditch, out of the ditch, what? And it was like, I'm sorry, that car up there put on its brakes, and I just thought. And the guy's like, that car's 100 yards away up there. But to a woman, it's on the hood, boy, it's right there. Moms just don't know the distance. It's that sharp intake of breath that gets them. You know that, what? Nothing. I just thought, I thought, nothing. Did you know that dads cannot spank in the car? Cannot spank in the car. Because to a dad, it's just like, it's one thing that you got to do. But a mom can spank in the car. Dads can't because my sister and I'd be cutting up in the back seat, and my dad would be panicking, trying to hit us back there. We'd be dodging him and laughing at him. But mothers can spank in the car because mothers have a radar in the back of their head. They know where you are at all times, boy. My mom, she could be reading a paperback book. We stick our head over that back seat, it's like, pow, ooh, right there. She'd get you. But when you get home, the roles reverse. Dads become the best spankers at home because dads can just like, pow, 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 get out of here and don't ever do that again. And it's over with. But to a mother, a spanking is a very emotional thing. And a mother's got to build up to it. Because I know my mom, it didn't matter if she had a switch or a belt. Remember the sound of that coming through the loops? Or a paddle? Or a fly swatter? My mother threatened us with her eyes. Worst spanking I ever got was the day I did that back to her. She would whip me with every word she said. I told you, don't ever do that again. And it never even hurt me. I was too busy thinking, is her arm muscle attached to her jaw muscle somewhere? That's why you know what a kid's talking about when he says, I'd rather get a spanking from my dad than a talking to from my mom. That's what he means. And I figured years ago I was going to be great at this, and now I know I'm a great dad because I know what to say. I mean, the things that you people have been saying to your kids in malls for years, I got them down. I mean, the things my parents said to me, I still have roaming around in my brain. Crazy things. Shut your mouth and eat. You stay out of the water until you learn how to swim. And hey, if you cut your feet off with that lawnmower, don't come running to me. So what I've done, I've compiled the 50 most famous parental sayings, and I figure everybody can relate to this, because either you are a parent or you had one. The 50 most famous parental sayings, and we're going to leave with this. This one is good night. All 50 of them in less than 90 seconds. You better change your tune pretty quick or you're out of here. I mean it. Is that understood? Don't shake your head at me. I can't hear your head rattle, and don't mumble. You act as if the world owes you a living. You got a chip on your shoulder. You're not going anywhere looking like that. You're crazy if you think you are. If you think you are, just try me. I don't know what's wrong with you. I never saw a kid like you. Other kids don't pull stuff like that. I wasn't like that. What kind of example do you think you are for your brothers and sisters? Sit up straight. Don't slouch. Would you like a spanking? If you'd like a spanking, just tell me now. We'll get this thing over with. You're cruising for a bruising. I'm your father. As long as you live in my house, you'll do as I say do. You think the rules don't apply to you? I'm here to tell you that they do. Are you blind? Watch what you're doing. You walk around here like you're in a daze. Something better change and change fast. You're driving your mother to an early grave. This is a family vacation. You're going to have fun whether you like it or not. Take some responsibility. Pull your own weight. Don't expect other people to pick up after you, and don't ask me for money. What do you think, I'm made out of money? Do you think of a tree that grows money? You better wake up, and I don't mean maybe. Do you act like this when you're away from us? We're giving you everything we possibly could. Food on the table, a roof over your head. Things we never had when we were your age. You treat us like we don't exist. That's no excuse. If he jumped off a cliff, would you jump off a cliff too? You're grounded. I'm not going to put up with this for another minute. You're crazy if you think you am. If you think you am, just try me. Don't look at me that way. Look at me when I'm talking to you. Don't make me say this again. Goodbye. Thank you.